Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're looking at some new cards which have been released for Goha Yuran's deck. Obviously he has Millennium Shield, but now we've got the full expansion of what this deck entails. Ichirin no Hoki or Year-Old Broom is a level 2 Earth Warrior type normal monster with 300 attack and 1300 defense. A broom with a soul. It said those who wield this broom work hard to get things done. It's a defensive style of monster. For a level 2 it's actually not too bad for its stat line. Decade-old Mystic Sword is a level 3 Earth Attribute Warrior type normal monster with 200 attack and 1400 defense. A sword with a soul. Those who wield the sword are encouraged to bide their time and wait to make their move. Like the previous version, this is a defensive strategy card, and it seems like he wants to be using Earth Attribute Warrior type monsters to synergize with the deck. Century-old Ancient Wooden Sword is a level 4 Earth Attribute Warrior type normal monster with 100 attack and 1500 defense. A wooden sword with a soul. It's said as its exchange hands, it's seen people's fortunes wax and wane. Like the previous examples, it's a highly defensive monster, and I'm sure we'll just now be covering their offensive versions as well. Hero of the Sweep is a level 8 Earth Attribute Warrior type fusion effect monster with 2500 attack and defense. Its materials require Hero of the East and Year-Old Broom. The requirement: you can activate this by sending the top card of your deck to the graveyard, and the effect is, until the end of this turn, this card gains 200 attack and defense times the number of face-up monsters that are Earth attribute you control. Including this self, if you have 3 monsters, that becomes a 3100 attack monster. It's able to get over some decent threat of your opponents, and it only costs you 1 card from the top of your deck. Samurai of the Wooden Sword is a level 8 Earth Attribute Warrior type fusion effect monster with 2500 attack and 2500 defense. The materials are Masaki the Legendary Samurai and Century-Old Ancient Wooden Sword. The requirement: you can activate this during your main phase. This card was special summoned. The effect is to choose 1 face-up normal monster your opponent controls and destroy it. If you destroyed a monster with this effect, you can also choose 1 Makuzuki or Cross Sword Deathmatch from your graveyard and add it to your hand. In terms of the effect, depending on what either of those 2 cards listed actually say, will depend on how powerful an effect this is. It does have to choose a face-up normal monster your opponent controls to destroy it. That happens to be a big problem, because if they've not got any face-up monsters, if they're all face-down defense position, or if they're all just effect monsters, then this effect doesn't actually work. Defense Shattering Sword is a normal spell card with the requirement: if you control a face-up normal monster that's an Earth attribute, you can activate this. The effect is to choose 1 face-up monster with 2000 or more defense your opponent controls and destroy it. You gain 800 life points and inflict 800 damage to your opponent. During this turn, you cannot have effect monsters attack. This depends on what your opponent is running. If they've got a highly defensive monster, then this works. You gain the 800 life points and you burn your opponent for the same amount of damage. The problem is it does prevent your effect monsters from attacking. You are reliant on your opponent from having a high defense monster that's face up, and you also have to control a normal monster that's an Earth attribute. Too many conditions for this to be useful. It says as a note, this sounds like Shuriken, a throwing style that's used by ninjas. It also sounds in part like Hurricane. Cross Sword Deathmatch is a normal trap card with the requirement: when the attack of your opponent's monster destroys your monster that's an Earth attribute, you can activate this. The effect is to inflict 100 damage times the number of normal monsters that are Earth attribute in your graveyard to your opponent. If you inflict damage to your opponent with this effect, you can also choose 1 face-up normal monster your opponent controls and destroy it. So this reacts to when your opponent destroys one of your monsters. That's fine, it's an easy enough effect to meet. The effect itself, to inflict 100 damage times normal monsters in your graveyard, depending on how many of those you're running, could be decent. It could be enough to finish off your opponent, but it also relies to use the secondary effect to target a face-up normal monster. Like the previous example, if their monsters are face-down defense position, or if they're just not normal types, then that kind of misses this effect. And the final card is Maikazuki. It's a normal trap card with the requirement: when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can activate this. The effect is to choose 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, inflict 100 damage times the chosen monster's level. The higher the level, the more damage you do. So if it's a level 1, that's only 100 life point damage. If it's a level 10, that's 1000 life point damage. Sometimes it can make the difference between winning and losing, but often, more cases than not, this might be considered a bit of a wasted card and a bit of a dead card. It says that the kanji, as a note, is basically an opening cheap shot strike in kendo. That has a bit of controversy as it's prone with misuse to break ribs or damage the throat of the opponent. As you can see from the kendo stick itself, it is going to jab the warrior in the throat. I think generally it's a decent set of support, but but I don't think it's enough to push this deck into anything that great. I'd love to hear your opinions of these cards and whether you'd consider running this style of deck, maybe merging it with the other Earth Attribute Warrior type monsters, because there are plenty of those examples around. I'd love to also have you look at the end screen and click onto that video to watch some more of my Yu-Gi-Oh content. It really helps to support the channel.